if they could just, this is the better. They could just introduce who you are and which film you were associated with.
I'm Ben Nabors, producer and co-writer on Palimpsest.
Michael Tyburski, director and co-writer on Palimpsest.
Lauren Wolkstein, the first 3 films that you saw, I did.
Katja Blichfeld, and I'm a co-director, writer, producer of the High Maintenance shorts.
Yeah, I was in that too. But we did it all together. That was our little thing.
And that's Ben Sinclair.
I'd like to open it up to you all to ask about them, or if you all want to say something about them. Either way. Let's start.
I was wondering, what is the actual science of house tuning, and how is it different from the real world? Did you sort of is that a real thing?
I mean, I think Ben and I like to believe that it could be a real thing. We're interested in stories that take place in like a close enough to reality, but certainly like New York City seems like a place where that sort of business could thrive. But we became interested in it because the science behind it is real. There was a radio piece that we heard on NPR years ago about the Catholic Church banning certain chord combinations in like the Middle Ages from being played because they were evil. So I think I like the idea that our apartments can be kind of surrounded by these subtle sounds and affecting our mental health. If that answers the question. Yeah, it's great.
For Katja and Ben, I really loved the natural, like even though your performances are all it's all very, at times over the top, it felt very natural. I'm wondering how much do you write ahead of time and how much do you improvise with the actors?
Thanks for that. We do, it's mostly written. We do tend to work with actors who we know can think on their feet pretty quickly and add some improvisation on the spot. And we also sort of leave it flexible for us to come up with stuff on set. We'll often, it's good that we edit our stuff because some of our takes are very, or some of our clips are very long because we'll run a scene and then we'll be like, okay, go back, now say this, try one where you say this instead, and we'll just sort of run through a whole, series of responses, sometimes or lines. And then we usually do like a grab bag take at the end for the actors to sort of say whatever they want to say, and sometimes that stuff makes it in, but it's pretty scripted.
Yeah, I mean, especially if a line doesn't feel well in an actor's mouth, we'll tell them to change it immediately. And going in, we say, you should, no, I don't actually. We say that it should sound as natural in their mouths as possible. So we don't really care about word order or syntax, unless it's like a matter of timing for a joke, and then we are pretty insistent. But it's a small set, so we give a lot of good food out, and we try to keep people sated. That's like our tactic, I guess.
Good craft services, that's your answer.
Again, for Ben and Katja, that was really great. I mean, all the films were really great. We were just laughing hysterical. I could watch this all day. So can you talk about where it exists? How often do you put it out? How often? I mean, the writing process. It's YouTube, right? Just talk about that for a minute.
Sure. Well, you're in luck. First of all, there are actually 7 other episodes online. It's a whole series. And it's called High Maintenance, if you didn't catch that. And the website, I'll just plug it now and let you know where you can watch it. The website is Helping You Maintain, is our URL, and you can watch all of the episodes there, or you could do a Vimeo search. You were asking what our process is for writing? Well, I'm a casting director and have been working in casting for almost 10 years now, and so we often begin with an actor in mind when we sit down to write something. And most of the time it works out and we get the actors that we want, because usually they're people we're friends with or happen to know, at least in some fashion. And so we'll start with that, and all the episodes are sort of, and the characters are sort of amalgams of things that we've experienced or our friends have and given us their blessing to use. But nothing is like 100%, they're all amalgams. Like nothing is like a total, you know what I'm trying to say. There's no, go ahead.
I mean, we started out the dealer was like a main character, and he was part of a service, and he had attitudes and a past. He was actually a psychopharmacology PhD, like he didn't get it, and he was paying off his bills with this, and he's becoming an armchair psychologist. And then we shot the first one, and it was just awful like that. And we were like, this is not interesting to any of us. So we actually sat on it for a while. And then eventually we found out that if we approached it from the outside in, like we drop you in the middle of someone's life, and then you have to find your way to the dealer, and you know it's coming, but you don't know how it's coming. Once we figured out that kind of structure, then things really just became about like, oh, remember that time when, like that magic box thing? Like one of my best friends, he's a weed dealer in LA now, but the first time he smoked weed, I was there, and it happened to him, and he was like, get this out my head. And that's how he sounds. And so, like, I didn't actually think that like a person would come into an apartment and try to calm someone down like that, but it was just too much to not use. So I mean, all of the stuff in there is if it didn't happen, then we're not interested in it. Like if we don't know that it could happen or it did happen, or if it doesn't seem plausible, we're not interested in it. And also, if we have a thing that we stay away from things being too on the nose, we always say like, nope, I would have expected that. You know, so if anything happens that I would have thought it was going to happen, we really try to steer clear, because we only have 5 minutes, so we need to put some sort of surprise in there. So that's what happened.
And also, like I'm sure many of you do, we're just collecting our ideas constantly, and we're married, in case you didn't know. And we're together quite a lot, and we always say our best ideas like come up in the shower when we're showering, sometimes having a conversation, and maybe you guys know how that is too. And yeah, sometimes we'll just have a great idea for a situation, or something will happen to us. Like we were, in a Pilates class a couple weeks ago and had this terrible teacher with terrible personality, and like right there we both like look at each other and we're like, oh yeah, this is we're doing something with this, and that's just how it goes. And then we just have like a big cork board in our office, and we're just constantly putting note cards up there, and then it's just like incidences or characters or jokes, and then we'll just kind of shuffle it all together in an order that makes sense.
And put some pot in there someplace.
Yeah.
It's not about pot though, if you haven't noticed. It's more about why a person might or might not smoke, or really it's just about the neuroses. Yeah.
Lauren, your pieces are obviously pretty heavy, dark. What attracts you?
Sorry about that.
No, very well expressed. I just wonder if there's sort of a level of exploration that you find in that kind of a piece, as opposed to something that we were just talking about with the lighter.
I think the stuff that I like making is kind of digging deep inside what people are thinking, not necessarily what they express externally, and kind of that internal struggle that people deal with. So I guess, like for Cigarette Candy, it was about this guy's internal struggle with what he was dealing with, the darker sides that people in public don't really see. And yeah, I like mysteries and things about trying to discover people and who they are, and the strangeness that people have that you normally wouldn't see from them by just getting to know them, kind of the underlying currents of what's going on with people, and the psychology of people. I wish I could do a comedy with these guys.
I have a question for Lauren. How did you come to do the piece in France?
I was in France writing a feature because the person who produced The Strange Ones is based in France. So I stayed over at my producer's place in France, and I had writer's block for the feature, And I kept going to all these parties that he was throwing or that was happening around us in the south of France over the summer. And his sister had just turned 20, and I came to her party, and I was the only one that was 30 and full of these teenagers, and the only one who didn't speak French. So, and they all threw me in the pool. So that kind of came from that real life incident. And I felt this urgency to tell that story because I was in France and I was experiencing all these things in France, not knowing the language and not knowing the environment. And so I put my feature on the back burner and kind of told my producer, like, I really need to write and direct another short in France because this is something I'm experiencing now, and I really want to do that. It had an urgency to it, and it felt more alive to me than what I was writing.
Where you were stealing?
No, I kept those safe.
I was curious, for Cigarette Candy, do you have a real-life event that you were basing that off of or drawing from in some way or psychologically?
Yeah, well, my dad he's a retired colonel in the Air Force, and he worked as a flight nurse, kind of like he's been deployed to several wars, and he was in the current Iraq war. So he's kind of dealing with like the Baghdad ER there. So he saw a lot of stuff there with a lot of young teenagers that he was in charge of, and a lot of wounded soldiers. So I wanted to write a story about somebody who was young that was forced into these adult situations. And then when I was trying to cast for the role, we had, this is kind of a weird story, but I feel like I have to share it. We named the character Eddie Van Buren kind of randomly, and we're casting and put out that name, like Eddie Van Buren, so-and-so, and description of who this guy is. And somebody wrote back to me saying, "Hi, my name's Eddie Van Buren. I'm not an actor, but I'm a soldier in the Army, and I am stationed in Iraq right now, and I have some stories to tell you." And he was like, "You're writing my life story." Because he was Googling his name to find like college, he played college football, and he was Googling his name to find articles about playing football, and he came across our casting call and was like, "Why are you writing about me?" So he told us, Eddie and I have become friends since then. He's now back, he's in Hawaii. He got back from Iraq several years ago. But initially when I was writing this, he was stationed there, and he was writing these really long emails to me about really graphic details of what was happening. And somebody that his best friend had died like right next to him, and so he was describing these things that were very graphic and gruesome, and those ended up being in the monologue that were told at the end of the story that I couldn't have come up with myself, and it felt more realistic. And the main thing was that his friend, who was not well, he was very sick, and his second in command came up to Eddie to make sure he was okay. He put a cigarette in his mouth, and if he smoked it, that meant that he was alive. So we used that in the monologue, and that's why at the end of the story, Candy gives him a cigarette to make sure he's okay.
Can I tag on something to that? This is a fun fact.
Wait. Yes.
Michelle Sims, the mother in Cigarette Candy, is the mother of the asshole Max in the Olivia episode. That's his mom.
Wow. We didn't know. We
Yeah.
were just watching. We're like, Michelle, that's his mother.
Yeah.
She's Max's too. Small world.
Oh, and the casting director of The Strange Ones is your casting partner. Just found that out.
Yeah, we just.
This is a great place to be.
We can do 2 more questions.
This is for Katja and Ben, which is, I noticed from talking to you guys that, you were working like other jobs, industry jobs for a while before you started this, but it's shot so well and looks so great. So I was wondering, did you just wing it, or did you have a DP who knew what they were doing, or how did that happen?
Oh, sure. Well, we've had a few DPs in rotation. 2 of them are NYU grad students. Laura Taruso, who's a friend of Lauren's. And another guy, Brian Lannon, who's really great. And then we had another DP, Charlie Gruet, who Ben had shot something else with as an actor, and they got to talking, and he was like, he saw our show, and he was like, I'd love to come work on it. And Ben DP'd one, actually, not that you saw, but another one in the series.
Not as good.
It's pretty good, I think. Yeah, we've called in a lot of favors from people who do know what they're doing with equipment, as you can see, and really didn't spend a lot of money on this at all. Like, as you say, it was a lot of favors. I mean, I don't know if it's gauche to say what our budgets are, but I guess I'm proud that we didn't spend that much. Every episode was like between $500 and
Just like-
$1,000.
Like coverage-wise too, it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. I will also say that she has an incredibly high standard aesthetically, and she doesn't let anything slip by. Well, yeah, something's fun, but it's $500. What are you gonna do? But she has an incredibly the blog that we keep with the show is a wonderful way to keep creating content between episodes. I think someone asked how often we produce them. It takes us about 2 months to produce 3 from start to finish.
When we're working jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, while working other jobs.
Yeah.
But I'm like an actor, man, so it's like just going to auditions and stuff, so.
For Michael, where did you find the lead guy? I feel like I recognize him from something, but I'm not sure what. And then he had a really interesting way of walking around the apartment, and just the way he actually walked, his gait.
Yeah, we think so too. We don't know. He brought that and couldn't really explain it, and we couldn't get him to stop doing it. But people have interpreted that maybe he had like a bad client call at one point and he's recovering. But we found him in an audition. I wanted to really work with. I've done a lot of shorts where I haven't worked with real actors or like non-actors. So Ben and I both really wanted to work with pros, and he stood out. He had a beard and glasses, not those glasses, but
I see him at auditions actually.
yeah. He came with like some little like tuning device in his pocket and like got it. He's been waiting. Yeah.
We couldn't afford like large rooms to cast in, to gather people to look at, to meet them. So we never realized that when he walked long distances that he had that interesting gait. So that got by us. Worked its way into our story.
So I want to thank you all for coming out and very much for